Mike, turn your games down.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another recovered episode of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin, and who is with me tonight?
Wrapped in a feverish delusion, it's Daniel Mellman.
And just an average person, it's Levi Derby.
And welcome. And Dan, where can people find you at?
People can find me online at my blog, Ludonarrative Discotheque. I'm still figuring out the URL and confirmation stuff, so you can find that link in the show notes.
This won't be up for a little while, so it will definitely be up by the time that the people hear this episode.
Well, I have the deadline for today, because Zelda 2.
Zelda. But this one will be in the can for a bit, probably.
Cool.
So just to warn you guys on air. And so what we recovered episodes I've only done, this is only my third one that I've done, is where we look back at an old game that we covered on the show before, but then I get different people and I want to redo it. And this is one that, so we're going to be recovering Golden Sun from Game Boy Advance, came out in 2001, developed by Camelot Software. Is a game that it was our fourth episode that we did originally. Back when the show first started, almost at this point, probably depending on when you're hearing this, close to 3 years ago. And or it'll be more than that, and I have not replayed it since. And so what we're doing, we're trying to go back and just find different episodes, because some of the early episodes are, in my opinion, not good, because we didn't know what the hell I didn't know what the hell I was doing at the time with audio. So we're just recovering some of the old episodes, and this is a game that I have always wanted to go back to because I need to play the sequel, and I didn't want to touch the sequel and having no remembrance of the first game in any shape or form. So that's.
Am I to understand this is the game your mom found?
Not my mom, but yes. When we first named the show, one of my co-hosts, DJ, we were trying to think of different names, and I was throwing a few out there. His mom had found Game Boy Advance and his copy of Golden Sun, and that's how we ended up with the name Games My Mom Found.
Nice.
Unfortunately, he also had quit like episode 15 because playing a game every week and recording about it is insane.
Yeah.
And now I play more, but Yeah,
I recorded an episode with you last week, and it has dominated a lot of my gaming time getting ready for these.
But I love it, so that's why I do it. But so first thing I want to ask you is Levi, when was the first time that you had played Golden Sun?
Oh gosh, honestly, the first time I played it probably would have been well after the game came out. I think probably my late teens, early 20s. Was the first time that I had found the game. If I remember right, I was looking up, I had been big into retro gaming at the time, and I was looking up on Google the best Game Boy Advance games and the best Super Nintendo games. And this was on a list of top 10 or something like that. And I was like, okay, I'll go to my local GameStop or retro game store or whatever it was at the time and see if I can find a copy. And I did. And that was my first experience with it.
Okay. What about you, Dan?
So I got this game for Hanukkah 2001. It was kind of the game I asked for, Nintendo Power and Nintendo Power Advance, which launched with the system. Really hyped this game up. I saw the screenshots and it looked amazing. I didn't have a PS1. I was a Nintendo kid, so I wasn't able to play all those 32-bit RPGs, and suddenly there was a 32-bit RPG I could play on my $70 handheld that you had to play in direct light. But I love this game. It's one of the first traditional JRPGs I played. And I grew up with Shining Force 2, which this game is kind of a sequel to, and UX design, and pretty much the same team made it. And I just had a blast with it and never finished the sequel. I played halfway through it. And I revisited it when it came out on the Wii U and didn't finish it, and then replay it again for this show and had a great time.
Okay. That's one of the big reasons why it's on here, so I can play Lost Age next season on the show. Mm-hmm. Because I really need to play Lost Age.
Yeah. Did you look up how Lost Age was made? Because the backstory is pretty interesting.
I did not. If I remember correctly, wasn't it supposed to be Golden Sun 1 and Lost Age supposed to be one game, but it was just too big or something? Yeah,
on the N64. Oh. So they had their plan for the game, and it's the N64 is near the end of its life, and they, Shining Force 3, they sort of kicked themselves in the foot by putting on the Saturn as the Saturn was dying. So they're like, let's make this on the GBA, and okay, for this size cart, we're going to need 2 games. So they cut it up into 2 volumes in the same way they cut Shining Force 3 into 3 volumes. And they're like, okay, we're going to follow these different factions. And get a bigger idea of this world telling
cool.
that one story. So I kind of think of it as Golden Sun Disc 1 and 2, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's a good way. I mean, it is even just by itself, like this is a monster of an RPG for a handheld. I played larger ones, but it's about like a 30-hour gameplay, I want to say, or so.
For the time, yeah.
I definitely that I didn't know the history behind the game there, with it originally being planned to be one and then being split in two. And I definitely feel as though like some of either, I don't know if I want to say the pacing of it or what my word I want to use there for it, but I think it's definitely very obvious in retrospect now that it was intended to be a single game and then became two. Because just like the whole time I remember playing the game, when it stops where it stops, at least for me, it felt kind of like this is where it's ending kind of thing. Like I feel like I'm only halfway done with the game, and it definitely screams that like it was one game kind of broken into two.
And a season later, we'd have Fellowship of the Ring, which did kind of the same thing, ending with the protagonist sailing off in a boat to really start the adventure.
That's funny.
And then roll credits.
Think about that. I mean, it does have moments like that with this game. Like because the whole point is as the game progresses, you have these 4 lighthouses you're trying to, if I remember correctly, not light up. Yep. And at the time that the story ends of this first game, 2 are lit. You 2 get lit, and you have 2 left. So like it makes sense that the game gets, the story's not finished at all. But I'm okay with that because even this game took me about 24 hours with ×2 speed to get through. So I mean that's not bad for a Game Boy Advance game. I feel like it's long enough. I don't think I would have wanted it to be both parts in one cartridge personally.
Looks like my clear time is at about 25 hours and 20 minutes is where I'm sitting at.
That's around where I was. I didn't do all the side stuff. I didn't get all the gene, which again we'll talk about. I definitely got all the gene on my first playthrough, and very different experience when you're underpowered. I had a blast replaying this.
But, I mean, just like the story of this game too, like the way it starts off, I think is pretty interesting. For even like because where you start off in a town where people have powers, and then like the town ends up going through it has like 2 different crises. When you have one where there's like a rocks falling, and one of your characters that's with you in the beginning, her brother, pretty much you think dies. Like you have a very traumatic opening in this game. Mm-hmm. And then you have the characters suffering what had happened a year ago when they start their adventure. They're still trying to recover from, losing family members. Didn't the main character Isaac lose his dad too?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a very traumatic opening I feel too.
It is funny that was it 1 year or 5 years?
I thought it was 1 year.
Okay, let's say it's 1 year, but I like how they have that opening and then it's 1 year later and all anyone talks about is what happened a year ago, and it's just like, yeah, remember this? It's the anniversary of when that happened. Isn't that a coincidence?
It makes it even funnier if it was 5 years, that like still 5 years later that's all they were talking about.
Oh,
like,
it's 3 years later.
Like
3, okay.
3 years, okay.
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle. But that is I guess it is kind of if you want to call it tropey a little bit, that climactic event happens and then 3 years later that's all anyone can still talk about. I guess it does kind of give the effect of this is a small town and probably not a lot happens, and so even if it was 3 years ago, that's still the most exciting thing, exciting in air quotes, that's probably ever happened to them.
Why did they end up going up to the sanctum again?
Because Creighton, the old crazy guy, convinces them to go there to check on something.
Okay.
The whole point of the early story is that, well, one, you're in a town where people have magic abilities called psi energy, where you can like move things, telekinetic, you can do different things, and that's kind of. And for some reason, Creighton thinks there's something wrong with the temple at the top of this town where no one's allowed into. So you have to sneak in there past one guard to go check on something, which essentially you're activating it without realizing it, because Creighton's not really good.
You screw a lot of things up in this game.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, basically the whole story is you mess stuff up and now you have to go fix it.
Yes.
Or be 5 minutes too late to fix it. As it may be.
When you go to the tower, you're the one that ends up activating all the issues that end up causing like a volcano or something, right?
I don't think that like the events of the opening story, because like after there's that first event 3 years before, then you pick up the actual story 3 years after that first boulders started falling kind of explosion thing. and then you make your way up to the sanctum up at the top of the mountain, and if not for your character having gone there, nothing would have happened. because the bad guys who were on their way up there had no way in without you.
And they do kind of try to steer you towards it and trick you into doing it.
Yes.
But
it is funny if you wouldn't have went up there, because you take these things called elemental stars, which are like holding the universe together or something like that. They're holding
that's
the planet.
Sense I get. Yeah.
And as you take them, and then that's why they're trying to light these lighthouses, because I forget. You don't even know why what the lighthouses do. You're just like, oh, they want to light them up. We shouldn't let that happen. They want to take these elemental stars and throw them in this lighthouse. We're going to stop them. Why? We don't know. We're just going to stop them. We don't even know what's going on.
Says it would be pretty disastrous.
Kraden's a piece of shit.
There is that that floating eyeball like guardian. Once you get up to the sanctum and you grab the basically you're forced to grab the elemental stars for the bad guys. There's like this floating eyeball guardian. I think he makes a mention of like, you guys should probably stop them. Like, this isn't a good idea.
Yeah. They force you to get the elemental stars, and they're sort of holding your friend Jenna and mentor Kraden at knife point.
And the funny thing is, Jenna's playable in the very beginning of this game, but then Jenna's gone after this first dungeon. You don't see her again until Lost Age. Yeah,
which is cool, because she's one of the main characters of Lost Age. Yeah. It's kind of bringing that all together. And also her brother, who you thought died in the prologue, shows up as a kind of half-hearted guarantee that they'll I thought that was amusing, because like he's wearing a mask. They're like, well, they don't trust us. Take off your mask. And then it turns out like they're like, he's dead, but he's not. And and that's kind of one reason why you trust him enough to get the elemental stars to then try to rescue Jenna and Kraden. But then they take, after you get them the stars and you give them 3 of the 4 stars, they take Jenna and Kraden with them anyway and just leave. But they don't hurt them.
No.
But you get back to the village, which is called
Vault.
Vault? Okay. It's an on-the-nose name. And you have a town meeting, and there's kind of this psychic message everyone hears that, no, these 2 kids are the ones who have to go on the quest, and you're not the most powerful people in the village, but you screwed everything up, and you suddenly have a destiny and have to go fix it.
That was that floating eyeball guardian thing, I think, if I'm remembering right, telling everyone that, the kids have to do it. No, not the adults. The children must do this.
But lots of heroic destinies in this game.
Yeah.
The other thing one thing also very interesting about this game is, I mentioned earlier, you have the psi energy. You get different abilities that you unlock as the game progresses, which lets you produce a hand and then move statues out of the way, which is a little gimmick, kind of felt gimmicky, but at the same time it feels cool. Like, it makes one thing that makes this game unique is that you get these abilities to alter things in the map. Not for combat, just for puzzle solving and unlocking things. And I like that actually a lot.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. It gave a lot of interactivity with the environments around you, with, like you said, not just combat, but the world map and the towns and stuff that you were in the dungeons. There's a lot of interactivity of making sure that you have the right psi energy to be able to do what you need to do to progress through this dungeon.
And it kind of brings the story to the forefront in the dungeons. In a way I really appreciate. There is a reason you have this heroic destiny. You have these magic powers that most people in the world don't know about. They're figuring it out in pretty disastrous ways, as we'll get to.
And most people don't have psi energy either. You're one of a special type of people who have it, so it also makes you more unique too. And I like how nobody can see the big hand that you're producing that's moving the statues. Only you can see it, and people with psi energy. Most people are like, what the hell is he doing?
Remind me a lot of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where the only people who can see these psychic powers are the people who have them.
Yes, that does kind of a very JoJo thing with stands. When the people who can do the magic can see the magic.
And it's funny because occasionally, so later on you get a character who can read minds. And sometimes they don't even mention it, but you'll try and read someone's mind and they'll just step back for a second and it won't work. And it's like, oh, they're an adept. People who could use psi energy or synergy are called adepts. And it's interesting that, there are just people in this world who can do this and don't know.
I don't know if I actually ran. I read a lot of people's minds, but I don't know. I didn't read everyone, so I don't know that I actually ran across anyone like that, except for there were some main like plot people. I don't know that I ran across like random NPC A who did anything like that, but I'm assuming that I probably missed something like that. But that actually is a really cool thing that I missed.
Yeah, there are a couple people I found in Tolby to do that, and there's a ton of people traveling all around the world in Tolby, so
That's
it makes sense
cool,
that they'd be there. Yeah,
I didn't try. Anyway, I play any game because of the show. I go through it as fast as I can for the most part. So I only mind read people that I needed to, where the guide told me to do it, and I just don't care. So
I read mines constantly. I loved it. Just being able to talk to people and get these like either like, oh, here's what they really want, or like these weird sarcastic little things, or later on you have to choose people for this undesirable task to row a boat, and they're all like, avoid eye contact, don't look at them. I loved it.
That's a good part. This game had a lot of interesting, like just the way the game progresses. The town, like the second town you go to when you get because after you get the character split up, then you get your third character, Ivan, which is the one with the mind read. I also like how they all have their own like way to them. I mean, because you can, and the other thing about this game, you can change up their job classes, which I did not. I play it exactly the way that whatever class they are. Like one guy's Isaac is earth, Garrett is fire, Ivan is wind, and that's how I completely play it. I do not step away from the boundaries of what the game has set for me because it's me. But I like that you can do that. I like how each character can be very different and it affects their stat. Like with Ivan, when you first meet him, I think his story is interesting. How you have to help him get the staff back that he lost, which you can never sell or throw away because it's a key. It's a key item, but it's a key item that takes up inventory because there are no key items in this game, which irritates me because your inventory slots only have so many.
There are certain rare items or key items you can sell and buy back as artifacts, just like you can in Shining Force. But Ivan wants to hold on to that one.
I tried to sell it.
I believe Ivan's staff is the only item that you cannot sell or take out of your inventory. So I mean,
you cannot sell the Mars Star.
Oh, okay, yep, okay, that one makes sense. Oh, speaking of the Mars Star, like the whole plot of the game is, hey, look, there's these 4 elemental stars, and we messed up, and we let the bad guys have 3 of them. They're gonna take the 3 and put them in the lighthouses, and we believe something horribly bad is gonna happen. So the story is them trying to stop that from happening, but ultimately the goal is to light all 4 lighthouses, and the players have one of the stars to light the lighthouse. Why don't they just dig a hole, bury it, and be done with it? I mean, obviously that would ruin the game, of course, but plot hole, like just go out into the wilderness, dig a hole, bury the star, cover it up, problem solved. Great, they can light 3 of them, but they won't be able to light the 4th.
Yeah, drop it in the ocean.
Yeah.
Just get rid of it. Yeah.
Just chuck it somewhere.
Sell it to a shopkeeper in the middle of nowhere.
and another like cool feature of this game too is you have their magic system is very interesting called Jinn, where you find little like monster like things around the world that you'll find either in dungeons. You'll find them on the world map. You'll find them in towns. You have to do different synergy things like move a block, grow a vine. And you get these Jinn that join you, and that's what makes this game also unique. And that, like I was talking about with the job classes, if you put different Jinn on different characters, it will affect how the character stats are and what spells they are if they're different job, which I did not experiment with because I can't. I just can't do it. I have to follow what job they are because their stats go up and their stats go in weird places if you screw around, so I can't do it.
You can do some fun stuff with that. Like I didn't get many Jinn, so I kind of had to really plan out how to use them. And I eventually sort of just went full fire with Isaac. And it was really interesting because he gets single target attacks, which is really great for boss fights. But after you use Jinn, you can do these Final Fantasy summons, which for the rest give you a buff in that element. So say you do a fire summon, your fire spells are more powerful. But when Isaac has these fire Jinn on him, he can't use his healing spell. So I would have to plan out when I would use these. The Jinn have certain moves or attacks when you actually use them, which puts them in standby, which is when you can use them for the summon. So I would have to plan out, okay, I'll use this turn, this turn, this turn, so I get my heal back this turn. And you can really plan out your job classes organically throughout a battle in ways I thought were really, really fun.
Yeah, so all these Jin that you find, they each have like a different element to them, and then each character has like one attuned element that they're best at, and so you can either just load one character up with their attuned element or whatever, or you can mix and match as you want, and that changes their classes. And from my understanding, there's like 3 different types of classes. There's like single element classes, 2 element classes, and then there's 3 element classes. There is no 4 element class, unfortunately. But yeah, getting some of those 2 and 3 element classes can be amazing, or if you do it wrong, it can be detrimental and just completely destroy your party. And then when you use the Jin in battle, your classes keep changing. And so, like, if you don't plan it out right, you could conceivably end up in a very, very bad situation. So, like, if you have everyone at a 3 element class, and then you use the wrong Jin in combat, you could end up like changing your character's class mid combat to like a really bad class for them, and then just utterly lose the battle.
Yeah, I even had 2 spells for a lot of my playthrough. He was kind of my item dump character, so I moved Jin around so everyone else was more powerful.
I mean, and also the way that you use summons in this game, because you have the Jin that are equipped to your character, and then they can summon them in battle, which then uses whatever the ability the Jin has, such as creating an earthy barrier where you have extra defense for all your characters. But then, as we're saying, is like it's not equipped anymore, so therefore your character loses some stat upgrades and things. Like it's a very risk reward type summon system, which I like too.
And again, I really like how it fits into the story. So the reason the Jin exist are when you took the stars from Soul Sanctum and Vault at the beginning, you did kind of break reality a bit. And these elements sort of spread across the world. And there are these cool moments that remind you of how wrong that is. So you go to a village later and have a party member who has a spell called Ply, which I assume is mistranslated from pray. I'm not entirely sure.
Probably.
And she's like,
that makes more sense. I was wondering what Ply was supposed to be.
Yeah,
or Nintendo didn't want Prey in their game.
Yeah, because you use it on a goddess statue at one point to solve a puzzle, which I was stuck on for a long time as a kid. But her whole thing is, we've had this ability passed down through my family for generations, and she's this village's healer, and she's the only one who's the caretaker of this lighthouse. And anyone can get it. You just move these Jin around, and suddenly, I have this ancestral mystical ability that has these world-ending potential uses. That's a cool little reminder of, using these Jin, this is not the natural state of the world. We have screwed things up, but we need to figure out how to use this power to save the world or fail to save the world or help rich people out, whatever you actually end up doing in this game.
I don't know. I have no idea where the story goes yet until I finish this. Until I play the other half. But it's very interesting with that. Because that's bring up the 4th character, Maya. I like her. I mean, she's a water adept, because essentially each one of your characters is supposed to be one's an earth, fire, wind, and water adept. But again, you can change their classes if you mess with the Jin and stuff, which I don't. But it's very I like that. Like, and I bet it is Prey. I mean, that makes more sense than it being. I don't think it's a mistranslation. It probably was just Nintendo said no, because Nintendo. Even in 2000, even early 2000, I feel like Nintendo still would have been very, like, they wouldn't have wanted stuff to have religion in it still.
A little bit, yeah.
They haven't really, maybe now they're more away from that, but I think it took them a long time. Like, I know in the 90s, they did not like that at all.
Mm-hmm. And this
also,
is early
when you use Ply out of combat in the field, like when you use it on like a goddess statue, it makes sense that you would pray to the goddess statue. But also, there's like a little angel will appear and kind of fly around a little bit on screen.
Forgotten about that.
Yeah, I completely forgot about it until just this moment. But yeah, like a little cherub baby angel will kind of float up and fly around, and that thematically makes sense that it was meant to be prey, and for whatever reason, it was changed to Ply.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a really cool. I mean, that's cool, and also makes that puzzle make more sense. I really like all the different puzzles. Like, I was surprised. I mean, I was cheating, so I mean, I had to walk through, but I think that ply puzzle where you have to cast it on, when you're in that temple. And I also like how when you go to that temple at first, you're not supposed to be able to go anywhere. And like to get that character, Mia, you have to go to this town, which I don't like this part, but you have to go like talk to different NPCs, which then triggers her to spawn in a house that you went into before. And then you get her to join you. Then you go to the lighthouse where she'll then you can go there with her.
Or she walks off to the lighthouse and you follow her and she's like, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. And you keep solving puzzles for her. And she's like, you're helping me, aren't you? Let's just hang out for a while.
She's a good character. And again, like this game also has a lot of that old RPG element where you go to a different town and each town has a different issue. Like with her town, they have a plague that you're trying to help solve. So you got to get the lighthouse, figure out what's wrong with the lighthouse. And then they end up lighting the lighthouse, which ends up making a spring that produces this like healing water that saves the town.
The bad guys win at that point, and it saves the people of this town, which I think is a really interesting bit of plot there. Like, okay, why are we doing this? Why are they doing this? It kind of put that all into question.
Yeah, the effects of what happens from lighting the first lighthouse and lighting the second lighthouse are dramatically different. When you like you mentioned, when you light the first lighthouse, like essentially like this, the spring of life or whatever, like starts flowing, and anyone who drinks from it is cured of all diseases. Like that's a definitively good thing. Like having this water that can just cure any disease from people and bring them back into good health like that. So I get that at that point in the game, it makes you start questioning, like, if lighting this first lighthouse did this amazingly good thing, like, why am I trying to stop it?
Yeah. Because an eyeball told you to.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's this creepy, terrifying monster who's just like, this is your destiny, you gotta do it. And you don't know what's going on, which I thought was pretty cool. Clearly the villains do. And I don't know if I knew back then. I probably didn't know back then, but I always thought it was cool that... So you play as Felix, Jenna's brother, who's one of the villains in the sequel. So I assume we're going to learn a lot more about what's going on there then. Yeah. I'm excited to play Lost Age when I get there.
It'll be soon. It'll be early first half next year. Cool. My plan to put it on the show pretty quickly because I need to play it.
We skipped a couple dungeons.
Yeah, we'll bounce around. That's fine.
Okay.
One of the things I do want to mention, I really like, because you go early on as you're traveling through this game, you end up at a town called Bilbin, where they're like, yeah, and they don't really like you there. They're like, what are you doing here? And then there's a tree outside the town. And as you progress through a little bit of the game, you find a town that's full of like just trees, because everybody got cursed by a giant tree, and they were turned into trees. So, and it's kind of like, it's interesting because like as you go through, you'll see these different random trees, and you can mind read them. And you find out they're actually people who were turned into trees, and then you're sent on this quest to go through a forest, and you have to go inside this tree and then fight. Which I always love going inside trees in games for some reason. It makes me think of Mystic Quest, which I like a lot. And like you in Ocarina of Time, and you go through this tree.
Mystic Quest before Ocarina of Time.
Yes, because Mystic Quest is what sticks in my head more when I think about going inside a tree than Ocarina of Time. I played Mystic Quest first, and that game means a lot to me as a kid. But you are like, I didn't really think about as I said it, I'm like, I didn't even think of Ocarina of Time until after I opened my mouth. Like, oh yeah, I probably should say that too.
So Mystic Quest, underrated video game. I like that game a lot.
Oh, it's a good RPG, but it's really just cool to me how you go to this, how everything is so screwed up with this, and you have to go through this giant tree, and as you go through it, you're able to then. Like you beat it up, and you bring him to his senses because he's been all upset after when you put the elemental stars in when they were stolen. It did something that altered the tree and gave him more power, which is what led him to then turn everyone into trees. So you caused this issue
and made it angrier.
Yes.
There's a nearby town's lord was cutting down trees in the forest to build a palace for his wife. There are a lot of like feudal lords screwing things up in this game that keeps coming up.
Yeah. Kind of the theme that I get kind of here from that I was starting to pick up on it kind of like at this point in the game was a lot of, so like the tree, if my understanding is correct, like what happened was when you took out the crystals, the magic stars from Soul Sanctum, there was like a volcano explosion and a bunch of like psi energy crystals just kind of rained across the continent.
Yes.
And if I'm understanding correctly, monsters did not exist prior to that happening. All the monsters you fight in the game are new beings that have happened since that explosion happened, since you took the elemental stars away from the sanctum and the psi energy crystal started, raining down, and all of the monsters you're actually fighting are animals that got like hit on the head with a psi energy crystal and then changed into a monster. And that's what happens in the forest too, is that tree that like cursed the townspeople and everything got hit with a, like, I assume a large psi energy crystal and like made him evil. So like these crystals are like raining down on like plant and wildlife and like just changing the entire world.
I never knew that monsters didn't exist until you were an asshole.
I think the tree is the person who tells you that like he mentions, if you like talk either him or his wife, because there's the two trees. You can talk to the big tree and then his wife tree.
I don't know what was going on there, but let's go with that.
But I think one of them mentions, either directly or through like mind reading, that all of the monsters, he says it, he at least mentions in the forest that there were never any monsters in like that land before, and that all of them are animals and creatures that were changed when the volcano happened.
Yeah, like the natural balance of the world has been thrown off in a very big way, and the world's become a much more dangerous place very suddenly.
And then there are both good and bad things that have come out of this, like the wellspring and being a very good thing, and then obviously monsters and trees that can curse people being a bad thing.
I like the part where you start going towards the tree and you're paralyzed by this kind of sap, and it's only your powers that protect you, like a shield shows up. And I like the idea that you just went here without thinking about any of the consequences and come very close to being turned into trees.
And then you never see that shield again for the rest of the game.
Well, it's funny because Ivan brings up that, maybe it's like when we get critical hits in battle, we can't always control our powers. I really like that. It changed how I thought about critical hits in this game.
They do a good way of working like what happens into the story, which I thought was really cool too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, and this game also has lots of small dungeons too. There's lots of little caves you go into, like after you get done with the tree and you go back to the town, or any point you go to the tree town. There's a little, like, you just go in somebody's basement and then you go through like a little like cave and you go get a gin that way. Like, there's lots of little stuff in this game that I really like the touches of stuff like that.
Yeah, it's the feudal lord's storehouse where he's keeping this elemental beast he found
outside in the yard.
Yeah.
And then some of the gin are just everywhere. Like in like random locations on the world map. Like you have to go to like a specific spot on the world map and then trigger like a random battle, and then you'll get a gin from that battle. And like they're just kind of like all over the place, and a lot of them are very hard to find. If you don't have a guide. I took a guide and I actually found all of them, but a lot of them are very, very hard to find if you don't like know what you're looking for.
I definitely found some of the world map ones just because I'm like, there's a weird area of the world map. I wonder if there's anything here. And, doing the old RPG trick of looking for little gaps in the trees, looking for secret areas. And suddenly, wait, am I fighting a djinn?
I wouldn't have liked that if I didn't have the guide to tell me where they were. Because I know when I played this game last time for the show, I used the guide, but I didn't go out of my way to get gin. I just tried to I was still trying to play the games a little more like, I'm just going to figure it out. I mean, that went away. But so like with this time when I played the game, like I looked up all gin, but I never would have found the random gin hidden in a forest or something like that. I mean, it's very cool. Like I can imagine if you're just playing this game casually and you're not using the guide and you're searching, like, oh my God, that's awesome. But for me, I was like, I wouldn't have liked it.
It's I could see it being irritating if you're a completionist, but I liked, and I wonder if I would have minded more if this was my first playthrough, but I enjoyed wherever I went, there were these cool puzzles to find these things.
It definitely has that old school RPG feel of like, hey, there are some really nice things hidden, but you're going to have to work to find them. And it's going to be like a brute force kind of work, like just go until you find it kind of thing.
Or don't find them all. I didn't find many at all. I found like 2 or 3 earth gin by the end, and parts were really, really difficult. And it was cool.
There's 7 of each color, or each element.
Yes.
So 7 ice, 7 earth, 7 wind, 7 water.
I found like most of the water ones. Those,
Okay.
for some reason, I just ran into those, which is good because that's how that and Earth, Jin, are the ways you get people healing spells, and healing spells are nice to have on your party members.
Yes, they
I
are.
think most of the water ones were in dungeons. And so, like, I think the water ones were the easiest ones to find because they were mostly in dungeons and you would kind of just run across them through, like, natural exploration of a dungeon, trying to find your way through it. I think, like, the water and the earth ones, I think, were the water and the fire ones were the ones that were harder to get because they were usually in...
You mean Earth and Fire?
Yeah, Earth and Fire. You usually had to kind of try to go out of your way to find them.
Well, one of the Earth ones is in the secret dungeon that if you do it, the Crossbone Isle. That's where you find one of them.
Yep.
There's some in some really random ass places too. Like some of the Earth ones are in, like there's a couple of Earth ones in town. Like there's one town that I went to the town early in the game, and you have to like climb up a tower, hit a bell, makes the djinn run away somewhere else, go through a cave. Like I had to go. It was when I went to go beat the game, and I realized I had to go all the way back because I missed this djinn.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're well hidden in this game too sometimes. So I get it why you didn't find some of them or majority.
Yeah, I think the Earth ones were some of the hardest ones to find. The Earth ones, a lot of them were like you could see them, but you wouldn't know how to get them. Like you would see them on the map, but like you can't go straight there. You would have to figure out some convoluted way to get to them.
I didn't tend to see them. I love those puzzles, and I probably saying it now because I got a decent amount of the fire ones too. Most of those were probably the fire ones. I just could not find Earth ones. Not find Earth Gen.
They were hard to find them sometimes in this game. Like I will completely agree with that. It was a pain in the ass.
but I mean, the reward is definitely there. I think like because we mentioned earlier about classes, a lot of the classes that you can get are completely based on which djinn you find. And in order for you to start using like some of the quote unquote better classes, which would be like the 3 element classes, you have to have, I think, at least 5 or 6 of every djinn to really start being able to make like 3 element classes like a viable option. And you kind of ultimately really need 7 to make like a full party use of it, but 5 or 6 of each element is where you need to be able to get started on doing some of those. So like some classes are completely inaccessible to you if you don't get most of them.
Yeah, but you can definitely, if you have fewer, you can still, shuffle them around and get access to some more powerful spells.
Also, the summon system is also interesting too. Like as I was saying, but as you use them, you get like build up where you can do summons, and then you do the summons that you do. Like you can use up to 4 is the max level, and you get different things that will happen. I only did the level 4 because that's how I play, but I thought I like the system.
Yeah, and I love the animations. Can we talk a little bit about how this game looks?
Sure, definitely.
It looks fantastic.
It's the most 2001 looking video game. It looks like a Sega Saturn game. It looks like I played Shining the Holy Ark, which is their previous turn-based RPG they made before Golden Sun. And that's actually a game in 3D. And I'm like, this looks exactly like Golden Sun. And this isn't in 3D. The Game Boy Advance couldn't really do that. But they're like scrolling around these matte backgrounds and rotating these scanned-in 3D models as sprites. They have these really dramatic looks in battle, these huge summon animations, and the sounds in battle. I know that's less how it looks, but it's all just such a bombastic looking battle system. I loved it, and it must have blown my mind on the Game Boy Advance as a kid.
I like it better. I'm looking at Shiny Holy Ark now that you mention it. I like what we got instead a lot more in this game. I don't like what I see in the Saturn.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a game that was really rushed to production to try and beat Final Fantasy VII to market and got completely overshadowed. But it's the same kind of look. Like you see the lineage.
Yeah, I just don't like the way it looks. But yeah, I see what you mean.
A lot of the summons in this game and a lot of the like synergy effects, basically magic, spells for in combat and even out of combat. There are a lot of things that have. It's not 3D, but like they look very good. They look almost kind of like 3D effects. And for a Game Boy, like that was like the art direction on it and stuff is phenomenal.
My guess is they were modeled in 3D and then scanned in as sprites, sort of like in Donkey Kong Country.
That would make sense. It
look
looks
like
better
3D
than Donkey
models.
Kong Country, though.
I like how play that with the CRT filter. Donkey Kong Country's pretty game.
I really like the graphics too. I think the sprite models are good in this game. Like everything, I think just pops very well. It has mainly a very colorful palette too in this game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very pretty game still. Like it's not bad.
Yeah, I dig how it looks. But
I was
I
happy
have
about that.
a great love of 32-bit RPGs. This was the first one I played, probably.
I don't know if I played many 32-bit RPGs. Because
I
I'm more of a 16-bit era. I mean, 32. What is 32-bit even really? It's mainly what Game Boy Advance and
PS1 and
okay, so that I would have played a lot then on PS1. So
yeah,
never mind. I just never really think of 32-bit because I think of polygons when I'm thinking of PlayStation 1.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But this is definitely of that era. This is the gene system is pretty similar to, in some ways, to the materia system in Final Fantasy VII. It's kind of its closest cousin I can think of. It's like move these different elements around to make your party how you want it.
Another dungeon. Well, there's a couple things I want to mention, but one thing I want to mention next is another dungeon that kind of sticks out to me was when you go to the Mogul Forest. That one, I thought that was
weird. That one was weird.
It was because you're kind of in a maze at one point. You have to punch trunks or not trunks. Punch. God, what the hell? The word I want?
Stumps.
Yeah, stumps. That's the word I want. Not DBZ characters. Stumps. You have to punch the stumps, and then a monster will jump out, and then you follow the monster to know what trail to go through. I enjoyed that dungeon actually. I mean, it's a dungeon. I enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of cool.
I remember going through that my first time, and I did that. I would punch the stump, and you'd follow the monster to know which way to go through the maze. On my second playthrough, just this time, I forgot that was a thing, and so I just brute forced my way through the dungeon, and I just kept trying every path until I found my way out. I got rather lucky, just kind of trying random paths, getting through it. But I completely forgot that was a thing, and so I got to the very end of the dungeon. And couldn't get out because you're supposed to punch the last stump and then the boss comes out and then it opens a way for you to leave the dungeon. So I got all the way to the end of it and couldn't figure out what to do until I remembered that I had to punch the stump and then to be able to fight the boss.
Yeah, you go to this very Shaolin Temple coded area, very Chinese, and one character teaches. Do they teach Ivan, or do they just give you, or do you just find
you go through a little test and you get an item that gives you force?
Yeah, which is where I realized what they were sort of doing with Synergy Cynergy, where there is this power that's been present in the world, and every culture has their own take on it, but they're all kind of protective of it. And I thought that was a really cool bit of world building, where no magic exists in this world, but different parts of the world think it's different things, have different cultural traditions around it. I thought that was awesome, and that's where you first start getting hints of that. And you go through this Shaolin Temple test and get some magic to punch some stumps.
It does a good job of giving you new items or new things that you need to progress through the game. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of getting items that you then that take up inventory space and you have to equip on characters to give them psi energy spells, but it worked. I just didn't like it because it took away my and you don't have much inventory in this game, which I did not like.
I did find myself towards the beginning it was fine, but once you get kind of the middle of the game, you quickly start running out of inventory space. And I found myself just constantly just selling everything, anything. You cure poison, okay, sell it. You cure curses, nope, sell it. I don't need it. I have a magic spell that will do the same thing, so I don't need you as an item.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was too.
I didn't super mind it. You have way more inventory space than, say, an early Dragon Quest game, which I guess is just what I'm used to. Didn't have to fiddle quite as much. Just I could deal with this level of annoyance.
Yeah, I can't. That stuff would annoy me. I mean, also one of the other things that did annoy me in this game, which is very old school, is the fact that when your party targets an enemy, if said enemy dies, they just defend. They don't attack anymore. Yeah, which is annoying because in any later RPG they would just attack the next enemy that's alive. But in this game, being kind of very old school, they just don't do anything. Even in earlier RPGs, that's a really dated mechanic at this point. I think it kind of made the earlier parts a little more interesting because most of what you're doing are multi-target spells, and it's
okay, how am I going to make this a little more efficient?
I mean, it worked to me. I had to play a little better, but I didn't like it because then you can't just jab A button as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, I think Final Fantasy got rid of that after the first game. Like that's how old it is.
Yeah, it's something I haven't seen in a long time. I was surprised when they pulled it out. I'm like, this has been a while.
Yeah,
it's not a common
I haven't played very many games that do that. I remember running across that issue at the beginning, like when you use your normal attack, but when you use multi-target like psi energy attacks, it really didn't come back up for me. I mostly would just spam like an attack that can just attack the entire enemy team, and then if your main target dies, it'll still deal damage to everybody else. So it didn't really bother me quite as much, mostly just probably because I just stuck with psi energy that would attack the entire enemy team.
Yeah, they'll still let you target that empty space, which you wouldn't be able to target if it was the beginning of a round.
Yeah.
I also didn't use spells as much. Like, I mean, the game forced me to, but I would try to play the game without using a lot of spells because I'm that kind of gamer where I like to just beat everything with physical attacks for some reason and save my MP just for healing. But this game forced me to have to use spells. Plus, after every battle, you refill some of your psi energy after. So the game does a good job of being like, okay, this is how you're supposed to do it, even though I wouldn't always agree with what the game wanted me to do. But I like it that I mean, so later on I would use spells all the time because I'm like, well, I should be using them. They're useful. They're better. The game, rewards me for doing it. I mean, I get psi energy, so I just started doing it. But it was hard for me to break that habit of wanting to use spells.
And you can kind of get around it in most dungeons with summons because there's kind of a cooldown period after you use a summon where the gen is just totally useless. But it's really not that long. It's usually going to be before your next random battle, so you can just toggle them into standby, which you can do right on the menu. You don't have to use them. Start a battle with a big summon and just keep trucking. They end up getting a little repetitive for me. It's the Final Fantasy VIII problem where it's like, no, there's really no penalty to using summons over and over again, especially in this where you can skip animations, thank God. Really nice quality of life thing for 2001. The balance is a little weird.
Yeah, I found that if I just kind of stuck to using multi-target spells, I very rarely ever felt like I was going to ever be in danger, even in boss fights. Like for me, it might be. I think I had a bit of a different experience because I did collect all the Jin. I used a guide. I didn't use a guide for where to go, but I used a guide just telling me where the Jin would be located, so I knew I need to go off on this side path to grab this one. But having all of them, I definitely felt like I was a bit overpowered for most of the game. The only fight that I actually had trouble with was the secret boss. That one gave me quite a bit of trouble. But otherwise, the most of the fights, it was one, I would cast maybe 2 multi-target spells and the battle would be over. And then for boss fights, it was a lot of the same. I never really felt like I was in danger of dying or anything like that, or my team wiping out.
Speaking of death, I only died on one boss in this game, and I died on the same boss both times that I played this game for the show. When you go on the ship at one point, because you're traveling across the continent, and you fight a giant squid. For some reason, both times I played this game, that squid kicked my ass.
That was the hardest boss for me too. So when you die, you just go back to the last church you went to.
Oh, okay.
Without losing any of your experience or gold. So it's really nice, really Dragon Questy. But for that, there's this whole scripted sequence where you're supposed to be guarding the oarsmen on this ship, and monsters keep attacking and running down, and the animation starts with you running into the room. So it's like, why weren't you there? And they've always knocked out one of the oarsmen. You need to go up and choose one of the asshole tour group passengers to row. Which is funny, except they use the exact same dialogue 3 times in a row before finally you stay below deck, and they're like, no, there's a big monster on deck, and then you die and do it again. I ended up just reloading my save and really having to tinker with my Jin. That one took me 3 or 4 tries, and
he's a hard boss.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, though. That's where I really okay, there's a lot of flexibility to the system. I can really route out my job classes to eke by.
So this is one thing I wanted to talk about while we were here is this trip, this boat trip that you take. So while you're doing it, like you said, that you're supposed to be guarding the oarsmen, and Isaac is clearly not. He's on a completely different part of the ship, and the enemy just run right past him and knock out one of the oarsmen. It's like, okay, And it happens 3 or 4 times in a row, and it's so just ridiculous. But the part that I found super cool is when you're told, hey, you're going to have to pick a new oarsman. You need to make sure that they're strong and that they can keep up with the other oarsmen, because if they can't row, in time with everyone else, then they're going to mess it up because they'll be rowing out of beat. All the oarsmen need to be in sync. If you pick the wrong people, and you have to pick specifically 2 weak people on the left and 2 strong people on the right, so it's not balanced at all, the boat will deviate and not go to the next part of the game. It'll actually take you to the secret optional dungeon of the game where you can run into the secret super boss.
Well, you can't go all the way down there yet. You can only do a couple floors.
Okay.
Yeah, I read about that last night, actually, and I'm just like, that's so cool, and you could get some powerful gear early on.
Yeah, and it's full of super powerful gear. Even if you can't get all the way to the bottom to actually get to that super boss, even if you can get 3-4 floors down, because I think it's a 10-floor dungeon or something like that, there's some really powerful gear there. So by you actually doing the wrong thing and messing up, you can actually come out with some really powerful gear.
Do you still have to fight the Kraken?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do.
So
did you just completely avoid the Kraken fight?
It's going to be well worth it then.
That's a hard fight. So when I was a kid, I was stuck on that. And I was playing this game with my friend Sam, and Sam loved grinding in games. And I was like, oh no, it doesn't really make a difference. It's such a small difference whenever you level up. And I tried and tried and tried to fight this Kraken. And then Sam said, just give me your Game Boy for 20 minutes. And he grinded for 20 minutes and handed it back. And I beat the Kraken the next time I fought it.
I think that's the experience I've had. I didn't have a problem with the Kraken, and I think it's because I grinded. I have a tendency to do like 1 or 2 minutes of grinding in each area. I every area I go to or dungeon I go into, I won't do a lot of grinding, so to speak, but I'll get to where I think, okay, the boss is going to be in the next room, and I'll do 3 or 4 extra fights. I'll just fight 3 extra sets of enemies in every single area, so it's just kind of adding a little bit extra as I go. And so I think that honestly might have been a little bit too much for the game, to where throughout the entire game I just had a couple extra levels that made a lot of it seem trivial almost.
Well, you also had all the Jin, which make a big difference.
That makes a huge difference, because every Jin you have gives you stat bonuses.
Yeah, and new abilities and easier access to summons. I'm usually a big grinder, but I don't know if it was the time limit for this game or if I'd played it before, but I was like, no, I'm just going to take this game at my own pace and figure it out, and, had fun doing basically a low-level playthrough, which I want to do more of
this game.
Because a lot of RPG stories work for me now when I don't know if the heroes can win. I'm just a little more excited.
That's understandable.
I'd say decidedly in this game at the end, the heroes did not win in Dragon Age 1.
No,
they did not win, or not Dragon Age, gosh.
Golden Sun.
Golden Sun. In Golden Sun, they didn't win.
Well, we'll get to the ending when we get there.
Yeah.
I like the ending.
There's a couple things I want to mention. One, I can't remember the name of the town, and I'm looking up, it's not helping me. What is a town you go in that's all flooded because the statues came to life because of you?
What is that name? Yeah, the guardian statues of the town.
Yeah, and you have to go in there and destroy these statues, and then you end up making it so that way they stop flooding the town, so you could access the other parts of the town. This whole town has been flooded.
And that was so cool because you're moving in and out of this dungeon and opening up more of this town. Just the dungeon, every single dungeon in this game has something cool about it. There's really no filler in this game.
This was a good one too.
Yeah. It's a cool dungeon, and I did find the secret Jin there. That was a fun extra puzzle.
I think every dungeon. I don't think that there were any turds for dungeons. They were all good.
I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the Lamancan Desert, where you have a heat meter. You have to run and jump and sprint.
That was fun. It was the second desert I didn't like, with the tornadoes and the...
Okay, that was annoying too. But I mean, they're still cool. They're not bad dungeons. They're interesting. They both have different, gimmicks that work. Like the one where, it gets so hot, we got to go find a spring to jump in. Otherwise, we're going to lose a bunch of health. And then the other desert that you go to later is, I think it was the Sahala Desert, where you have...
Yeah, probably mistranslated from Sahara.
Yeah.
Or changed it just a bit to feel more natural.
And that one was annoying, too, because like you said, you have these tornadoes you have to jump into or avoid, I think, at one point. And yeah, that was annoying. But where you have to
that one got me.
Cast douse, and then you can then fight a mini-boss and continue on with the game.
That was the first... I want to say like point in the game, the Sahala Desert, where you have to like run into the tornado and then you have to cast your psi energy to like make it rain on the tornado. And that one got me. Like I genuinely got stumped there, and I didn't want to use a guide. I wanted to like just try to do it because I didn't have the same time constraints that you guys did. So like I wanted to like try to do it as best I could. And I think after like an hour and a half of just like racking my brain, like talking to people, using mind read on people, like trying to figure out what to do, I just 1 and 1 was not equaling 2 for me, and I couldn't put it together that I had to use I had to put water on the tornado, because that's just such like a strange concept. Like you would want to be picked up by the tornado and then make it rain on the tornado, get out. Like it just wasn't going for me.
Well, you hear what happened. You hear there are these soldiers trying to get through the desert, and they realize the only way they can get through the tornadoes was to douse them with water.
Yeah.
But they had to carry these huge buckets of water, and the people ahead of them had no problem getting through because, they could make it rain like you can.
I think
that's Satoru Minardi.
I think for me, the issue was that I forgot I had that spell because you've never used it before. Like that's the first time that I think, I could be wrong, but I think that's the first time that you ever used that spell. And so I completely forgot that it existed. I think that was my problem. Like I realized that I had to use water in some way, and I was trying to figure out a way to like get a barrel or bring a barrel with me or some way to get water, and I just had completely forgotten that spell even existed.
It's used for a puzzle earlier, but it was a while back.
Okay,
back when you first got the gem.
That thing gives you the ability too, which is kind of weird.
Well, it's an item you can get, and I'm pretty sure some classes just have it. Like some.
Oh, okay. I never saw it because I didn't switch around the classes.
And I guess, yeah, like if you do switch around your classes, you can end up in a part like that where you're going through your psi energy, and you may just not even have that ability because you've switched your classes around, and so that's not one that's in your repertoire. You would have to then like realize that is a spell, a psi energy that like is available, and then have to change your classes back to something that would give you that ability.
Mm-hmm. Which I did constantly in the part right before that, which was like probably my favorite part of the game. You rescue this old man in a cave who's using one of those items that give you the spells to make himself invisible, except he can't move. So you go deep into the cave to find the draft of Lemuria, which he's using to keep himself alive. And he's like, "Oh, are you Lemurians?" And you're like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And it's like, "Oh, you're adepts. Oh, I want to talk about this." And then he's interrupted by his guards. So instead of getting answers, you have to fight in this tournament back in town, except he's so clearly way more interested in your powers than the competition. He rigs the whole thing so you can cheat using your psi energy. So you need to kind of seed the crowd with your party members so they can cheat on this obstacle course so you can get more items for the battle.
And you could actually lose it. You can lose that entire thing, and it doesn't affect anything. You get a different item, and that's it.
What item do you get if you lose?
I don't know because I didn't do it. I just know that you don't fail the game. You just get a weaker item.
Okay, I thought that part was super cool, and I was pretty underpowered, so I needed all those items and had to find out battle strategies to do that. And I love the idea that he's just throwing this entire tournament into disarray because he wants to see your psychic powers. And it's building tension for those answers you're finally about to get. I thought it was so good.
It's really cool.
That was definitely one of the better parts of the game for me, that entire kind of like tournament thing. That was one of the highlights of the game. I thought that was super fun.
It's very cool, and it's very unique too, where it's just an obstacle course. I mean, I played this game mostly in ×2 speed, which made this harder because I had to actually switch it off so I could do the puzzle a little better because it was too fast. Well, this is a slow game. I mean, anytime I play a Game Boy Advance game, same with like Pokemon, I always put ×2 speed on to make the game go faster.
It's way faster than Pokemon. Give it some credit.
It is, yes. No, Pokemon is terribly slow, but still, the game was too slow for me.
I like imagining the tournament from the perspective of the rest of the crowd. And they're like, oh, we're suddenly allowed right up to the obstacles. And then suddenly this giant pillar of ice appears and logs start moving on their own. And this log shows up and jams this conveyor belt.
Vines start growing out of nowhere.
Yeah. It's like something fishy's going on, but I'm drunk and I'm having a good time, so whatever.
And they're only happening on this one side to benefit this one person. The other guy gets none of this.
Well, who knows? You don't see what's happening. Maybe there's like this other band of heroes. Although I guess if you lose to them, you still get the job. So
yeah, so there's no one else. And then and to get to find the old guy, which then leads you to a tournament, you have to go through a dark cave, which I didn't really like this place. This annoyed me, where you're like in a very dark cave you can't see very well.
Well, you could use reveal to see a little bit more, which I thought was neat. But still, dark mazes, very.
I'm just not a fan of dark caves in any game, including Pokemon.
Old school.
Yeah, especially when there's no like real reveal works, but reveal only doesn't like follow you. Especially like if there's no like way to like brighten up the dungeon completely or anything, or even give you like an air like a radius around you where you can will follow you. Like
random battles are loading, it deloads the darkness.
Yeah, that was one of the best parts of it. Is that when the battles load, it deloads the darkness, so you would get a quick glimpse of everything on the map, and I would just be like, okay, memorize it. Where do I need to go?
Not in times 2 speed, you don't. That's too fast.
That was not my favorite part of the game. And you have to like memorize these, like which rocks apply to which colors. And if you don't, I remembered, but if you don't, you have to go back and talk to the guy.
That was annoying. That puzzle took me a little while. I had to look, because I was using the guide, but the guide didn't really explain it. And I had to look up stuff like, I do not understand this puzzle.
I was just like chanting the order of the colors to myself. And I was like, I'm still going to remember this by the time we podcast. And I totally don't. But yeah, the stuff that came after that.
And it's also kind of funny how you just find an old guy who uses a cloaking spell, who's then hidden in a tunnel and like passed out because he ran out of medicine. And luckily for him, you guys come and find him. Otherwise, he just would have died in the tunnel.
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah,
he would have just wasted away and been dead.
Yeah.
So this guy, Bobby, is sort of the lord of this town. He's amassed this huge fortune because he's lived for hundreds of years. Like, how did he get the draft? Did he end up going to Lemuria? Okay.
Yeah, he went to Lemuria on accident. I think hundreds of years ago, his boat kind of just wound up in this place called Lemuria that had never been mentioned before in the game.
And you never go to in this game either. Yeah,
and you never go to in this game. What I get of it is basically it's like an island of like the original adepts, and then like they migrated from Lemuria to like the continent, and that's where like the adepts came from. They all came from Lemuria, and he got basically like this water that makes him live longer.
And it's interesting because he would be the villain in most versions of stories about alchemy. Just this guy who's taken over this town with his great wealth, manipulating everything around him so he can discover the secret of youth. And you're just like, yeah, I don't know, our objectives align, I guess, so we'll work for this guy. Until the ending where you're sailing off in his boat and just like, we're totally screwing this guy over and just looking for Jenna, right?
Yeah, he definitely, there are definitely parts of it where he's talking to you. And he's talking about how he needs to get back to Lemuria because he's running out of his anti-aging potion, his elixir of life, and how he has to have it, and he'll do anything that he needs. And as he's talking to you, and I'm like, this is the villain. Like, this guy is a villain. Like, everything he's saying to you screams villain. Mm-hmm. And then your character just like, okay, we'll help you.
Doesn't he kidnap a young girl to blackmail a nation into building a lighthouse to him so he can guide ships to it?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he's completely a villain.
But it's funny that our objectives are aligned, so why not?
I don't know if you didn't realize she's kidnapped as much either. I can't remember if you're aware.
If you talk to her, they mention it.
Yeah, it's kind of. I think they call her a ward, but you can actually find her room. Mm-hmm. In the castle and like talk to like her handmaid or something, and then the handmaids will. Too. Oh, okay. Yeah. But they'll tell you that basically she's been kidnapped.
Well, they won't say that. She says like, oh, she's been a guest here for a while, and if you read her mind, it's like it's pretty terrible what this guy's doing. I guess we'll find out in Lost Age. Like I'm really excited to see the rest of the story because I'm invested in this world and really don't know where the story is going.
Yeah,
I do know where it ends. I won't ruin
I do
it
too,
for you.
but
Okay, you do know?
in broad strokes, I know the premise of Dark Dawn, the third
Okay.
Golden Sun game that came out 8 years later and nobody played and ends on a cliffhanger.
Okay.
that we'll never get.
I doubt it will.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's been out for a while.
Yeah,
We're not getting
came out
it.
11 years ago at this point.
That's just one of those games that's kind of on the shelf of never going to be finished.
Yeah, I'll probably play it if I finish Lost Age because I like Camelot RPGs. I grew up with the Shining series, and I grew up with this game and realized, oh, this is just a Shining game for Nintendo. I like their Mario sports games. This game is designed by one of the fathers of Waluigi.
So there's, and then one other thing I thought was also interesting about this game is this game has 2 optional dungeons to go to. The first one being after you finish this and you get the stealth, because after you do the whole tournament and you do everything, he gives you the item that gave him stealth. If you go and talk to him again when he's in bed, you have to go all the way back.
I know that.
It's completely optional, and the dungeon's optional too. Where then because earlier in the game when you meet Ivan, you meet these merchants that are heading back to one of the towns that you go to.
Right.
I think it's Toby, and they're idiots and decide to go north because the bridge is out, and they go into a town full of thieves and they get captured by the thieves. And you can go back to you can go to that town, which is near where you started the game. And this is where you end up, like, you go through a whole stealth dungeon, which is, I think it's very interesting. You have to cast a spell, hide in the shadows, time the guards and run past them to go through this dungeon to then rescue the merchant that that happened way earlier in the game.
And that's a big part of Ivan's story. Like, Ivan was adopted by this guy, and he's like, but Ivan feels like the chosen one of every place you go, which I thought was kind of fun that it's not your main character. But yeah, I guess that really pays off his story. I should go back and do that.
It is a pretty cool little event, too, to do it. It's not bad. I enjoyed it. And you have to do it twice. Like, you do it the first time, you rescue the merchant, you beat the boss, and then you leave, and you got to go back in again and go partway through it to find... And there's a woman standing in front of a doorway that you saw earlier, and she wouldn't move. But now if you go in there and talk to the old guy in the bed next to her, now she'll move, and there's a djinn hidden in a cave.
Okay.
It's something that I never would have known about if it wasn't for the fact that I had a guy that told me, yeah, go do this. Because you go to her and you talk to her, she's like, you can't go in here, and that's it. Oh, I captured a creature, there's a creature hidden in here, which, again, it references djinn, but I wouldn't have thought to go back after I beat the dungeon to try to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also a hidden djinn in Vault that you can't get to until you have the lift spell, which you get way later in the game. So the game expects you to backtrack all the way, and backtracking is not easy because there is no fast travel, there is no airship, there is nothing that you get to use. You literally have to walk back and go through caves and things.
The game ends as soon as you get the boat.
So once you get the boat and you go across the sea, if you can go directly north to the start of the game, that bridge that was out at the beginning of the game is rebuilt now. So you don't have to go necessarily you still have to make a bit of a trip up, but you don't have to go way out of your way and all the way back.
It took me a while to figure out what to do. I had to look up multiple guides, and I'm like, what cave do I use? And it took a while before I finally found out. There's a certain cave where you have an ability now you can push a rock over or lift a rock over that lets you get through. Otherwise, you can't get back.
Right. Yeah. There are some kind of shortcuts back. It's still a little bit of a trip, but it's not quite as bad as having to go all the way back. But you kind of have to figure out that these shortcuts are there.
It's very confusing.
Yes.
And I was annoyed because you can't go back to the boat, and then if you go around the lake or the lake or ocean, whatever the hell, not an ocean, lake, whatever it is, you can't. There's a mudslide that happened where you can't get through to get to this other town. It's like you have to go through a little
djinn right there.
It's very annoying. Like I was frustrated with this part because I wanted to go back. I wanted to get all the djinn in this game. I wanted to 100% this game for the show. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to because I can't figure out how to get back. And it took me multiple Google searches to find the one cave that has an entrance that will lead me back to to the other part of the game.
I might go on a bit of a hunt before I go on to Lost Age because there is a secret code in the Lost Age manual to enter on the title screen that will bring a password to transfer your data into Lost Age, and you keep all your djinn and levels and stuff.
Only 15 pages worth of code?
I saw those codes, and you can pick how much stuff you want to bring over, and it's okay, the level, the first basic stuff is a 16-digit code, and then level 2 or most of your stuff, but not quite all of it, is like a 3 or 5 page like code of like this is like 300 characters long, and then like all of your stuff is like it's somewhere around like 1,000 plus character code or something around there, and it's like
it is 260. It is 260. It is not that bad.
Okay.
It's still bad though.
It's still really
still bad.
And yeah, I'm gonna have to, when we do Lost Age, I saved the code. I screenshotted all the pages because I played this on a phone, and I am ready to input that monster code when we get there.
And that's the thing. When you were a kid, you could take a camera, but I remember writing down every individual character because I didn't have like a second Game Boy to do that with. I think so. That's a feature that's also in Shining Force 3, which was released in 3 volumes, the game they made right before this. And it makes a lot of sense if you can just put in another disc and load your save data. And I'm pretty sure they decided to do this without thinking of what it would take to actually do that on a Game Boy Advance.
You can connect them if you have, a
link cable.
A link cable. And a second Game Boy.
That way.
And a second, so, hey, friend, Johnny, can I borrow your Game Boy for the day?
Yeah. Or maybe you get a DS.
Can I have it after school? I'll bring it back to school. I'll bring it back to school tomorrow.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention at the top of the show, but I want to bring it up since you just said that. I never had a Game Boy Advance, so I didn't play this game until I bought a DS and I played it on there, because you just reminded me of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first introduction to this game. All right, and I think the only dungeon besides the final dungeon that we have left to talk about is we should talk about Crossbow and Isles pretty quick.
Yeah, sure.
I like Crossbow and Isles. I mean, when I played this game for the show last time, I completely avoided it because I just wanted to be done with the game and move on. But this time I had more time, so I'm like, I want to do everything. I actually like this dungeon. It's just a bunch of different floors with a bunch of puzzles that make you use psi energy, and you fight a mini boss at the beginning of each floor. Like, I thought it was actually pretty cool. I was surprised.
Yeah, it was really fun. The puzzles weren't super hard or super easy. They all had like a direct route through them, and then if you wanted to get like some of the bonus gear, they had, a little bit of a harder path through.
And I did that. I got almost all the bonus gear. The part that kind of broke me a little bit was some of the gear is cursed, where when you equip it, you can't unequip it.
Nice.
That irritated me a lot.
And then there is the cursed gear also will make you randomly miss attacks as well. If you have a cursed item on you, I think it's miss attacks, I think is the effect, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that like 1 in like 4 of your attacks beyond like your normal chance to miss, like you also have an additional like 25 or 30% chance of missing any attack. And there's another item that you can get, like a ring, that negates that effect.
Yes. And I made the mistake of, I got all the weapons, but I didn't equip the best weapon because I equipped something else first before and I was using save state to mess around, and I was a little irritated, and I never got the best weapon in the game because I forgot to I grabbed it, then I reloaded my save state, then I forgot to grab it again the second time.
How do you get rid of the cursed items? Do you have to like go to a church?
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay.
You go to a sanctuary. You have to go to one of the churches, and then there's an option for like remove curse or remove item or something like that, and they'll take it off of you. The item still remains cursed, but they just basically unequip it from you for you.
Oh, I wish I would have known that, because I would have did that.
It's the I don't know about you guys. Speaking of the churches, like I never used them, not once. Beyond being able to remove a cursed item, which I never actually did. I was fine with how I ended up equipping them. I never used any of the services of the church, which they were all. None of them were like heal your party. It was like remove curse or remove poison or I guess revive a downed ally.
I used it to revive.
Same.
But like I always had like a djinn that could revive an ally or a psi energy that could heal or remove a poison or something. So like I never really made a lot of use of the churches just because I felt like the game did a good job of giving you what you needed to avoid needing to go to the church, I guess. Again,
depending on your power level. Like I died a lot, and that spawned you at the closest sanctuary, and it's like, okay, then pay some money to revive everyone and get back on the road.
Getting back to Crossbone Island, the boss though, the final boss there did, even overleveled, gave me a lot of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
No, I can get it. I had problems in this game sometimes.
I haven't fought him yet. I should.
The Blackbeard,
didn't-
he was a cool fight though.
Yeah.
I was scared to fight him the first time because but I'm like, okay, I'll try it. It's actually a really good fight. Like, it was a lot of fun. It is very challenging, but I thought it was very well done too. Just the way that he is.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was maybe like my battle tactics up to that point in the game, because I typically didn't use any of the Jin's abilities or summon the Jin in any combat. Most of my combat just revolved around, I'm just going to use my Synergy, my magic abilities, and just blast people with that. And that's gotten me through up to that point. But with Blackbeard, that tactic didn't work at all. So I had to, because up to this point, I had been doing, I think, what you guys were doing with the Jin and just assigning them to like their normal person. I wasn't messing around with different classes, really. I was just going with the base bear classes. And I had so much trouble with that particular fight. I actually went out and looked up a guide on like some of the better classes you could get. I redid all their classes to be like the 3 element classes. Still had trouble with it, and then had to look up some other stuff on how to get them. I just had so much trouble with that fight. I probably lost in the neighborhood of around 20 fights before I actually finished them. And then the way I ended up winning was through a summon rush. So basically, I just put all of my Jin and was like, okay, all of you guys, before the fight, I'm putting you all in standby. So all of my characters are super weak. None of my Jin are equipped. And then when the fight started, I just spammed all of my Jin to summon them, to get some really strong attacks in. And then in round 2, I summoned them again and ended the fight. And that's how I ended up fighting him and winning. I couldn't beat him through like normal battle tactics. I had to do a summon rush on him to just spam it.
I started most boss fights with summons because they also power up your spells.
Yes, they will. You get pretty good bonuses from summoning.
Mm-hmm. And anyone can use a summon. Anyone can use any standby Jin, so you can sort of.
Which I thought is also really
around.
very different from a lot of other RPGs. Usually, like, you'll assign a particular summon to a specific character, but in this game, that's not the case. Like, once something is ready to summon, anyone can use the summon.
Yeah, and since your classes are potentially changing throughout a battle, I think that's a really clever idea.
It is.
And you can also, have people who maybe don't have as much to do in a battle use Jin to get them ready for that summon, and maybe throw some status effects on their enemies.
When I fought Blackbeard, I did that a lot too, where I was casting all my summons just so I could keep doing things like that. That fight was just about nutrition too. Like I didn't do something. Sorry, final boss fight I did summon. This fight I just kept using certain spells. I healed every single turn because if I didn't, he would murder me. So, and it was just about nutrition. I would use save state just to make sure I didn't fuck up too bad. Like if I didn't have a really bad turn that just cost, because he can kill you very quickly if you make a bad move in a bad turn. Like if you decide not to heal, like I'm going to be greedy and attack another time, like he will massacre you sometimes. Yeah,
he had some really, really rough attacks, especially because he gets to go. I think he gets 2 moves per round.
Yep.
And so, depending on which ones he decides to use, he can. If you don't have enough HP, he can just kind of like one round just KO your entire party if he ends up, if you get like a bad round of attacks.
Yeah, he's an asshole. But he's a cool secret boss. He's the hardest boss in the game, and I like that he was there. Because it's completely optional. You don't need to mess with it. And I don't remember what you even get for beating him.
I know that something will be different in the second game.
There's a dialogue choice that's different.
I read that.
Yeah, there's something different about dialogue. I wasn't for sure exactly what, but
I am interested to see how they portray Isaac, the main character in Lost Age, because he's a silent protagonist in this game.
Yeah.
Felix is in the second, and he talks in Lost Age.
Oh, and one thing that we had forgotten to mention is one of the other people in the other group, which are with the 2 villains that you meet very early in the game, that Saturos and something, they're the ones that... Minardi, they're the ones that set up the first issue that caused the accident 3 years before when the game started, and they're the ones that push you to get the elemental stars, take them from you. Their team is Felix, Jenna, and Kyle is another one of the characters, which is the brother of Mia that you find out earlier in the game, which we just didn't mention. And then Shiva, the one that's in prison, that was a ward of that one castle. She's also part of their team in the second game.
Yeah.
Or in their group in this game, but
so basically in Dark Ages, you basically take over the party of like the villains not necessarily like the two main villains, but like you take over like people who were in the party of the villains for the first game. It kind of like switches sides on you, basically.
Yeah. So Felix is the silent protagonist in Lost Age, and Isaac can talk, and I have no idea what his personality is going to be like, because almost every cutscene is everyone else is, saying their lines and stuff, and Garrett's talking for Isaac, and Isaac frowns. That's the only way he emotes. There's just this little frown emoji that keeps showing up over his head.
We also never had mentioned the emoticons that they have in this game. As people talk, they get little faces above their sprites and things that show what they're feeling.
Yeah, it
cool.
feels a little ahead of its time. These very like Japanese emoji.
Yeah, I mean, especially now when you think about emoji are such a big way people communicate too.
Mm-hmm.
In text and other things like it. Yeah, it was definitely ahead of its time.
And they have your dialogue options are only nodding or shaking your head, just like in the Shiny games, but now there's a little animation of Isaac going like, mm-hmm, or mm-mm. It's very cute.
One thing,
I'm okay
I may
with
have missed this in the game. Maybe it's something that I just didn't get or didn't figure out. But for me, at least, it kind of seemed like a nice little interesting like location. Is I found this area on the world map you can go to, and you walk up a little path, and then there's a cave. And there's a guard in front of the cave, and the guard just simply says, "Sorry, you're not allowed to go through here." And I can't remember if I ever found, maybe I'm misremembering this location, but I can't think that I ever found a way to go through that cave all the way through to the end of the game. I think was it just a location that you just couldn't go through? No,
supposedly after you do the Lumpa, or you rescue the merchant from Lumpa, if you go and talk to him when he's back at the town, Kele, they open the tunnel for you, which lets you go back to the other part of the continent. I tried that, and I rescued him, and he wouldn't open it, so I don't know if I'm missing a dialogue choice or something where I'm supposed to talk to somebody else, but that's what that is.
Okay. Yeah, I never found a way through, so I thought it was, my whole thinking was that, like, oh, they just threw in this random location just to kind of show you that, like, you necessarily can't go anywhere you want to, but that probably makes more sense.
Yeah, you're supposed to be able to.
Missing. Okay.
No door unopened. No cave unexplored.
And then that brings us to the I think the only thing left to talk about now is the Final Lighthouse. So when you rescue Bobby, which is technically a villain, the guy that's giving you a ship, and he sends you with somebody else in the final part, this is when you see that a lot of his soldiers have been all beat up by the other team. You end up, he's building a lighthouse, his own lighthouse, on top of, or right next to where, or nearby where the other lighthouse that you're going to go light, or you're trying to stop being lit, is here. We have to go through a tunnel to get into it because there's like a secret room, and this is where you finally are confronted by Setros and Minardi, who you fought in the beginning of the game. At this time, you fight them for real.
Are they like a different species than anyone else, because they have like blue skin and like really spiky hair, and they just seem demonic.
That's what I always took it as. Either they were a different race or something.
Yeah, I've assumed they were some kind of a different race, maybe, because at least at this point we haven't seen what anyone looks like from that one island that Bobby went to. I can't think of. Lemuria. So I'm wondering if maybe they're Lemurians.
Also, you're only on one continent in this game.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I mean, that also kind of plays a part where you think about, like, because any world is going to have multiple continents, so the idea that people could look very different on different continents, different areas they grew up in. That's how I took it.
But yeah, this whole final dungeon it's kind of like two parts from it, because you have to go partly through the real lighthouse and do some stuff there. Then you have to go to Bobby's lighthouse, which was built on top of this cave system, and go through there into like a back entrance into the main lighthouse, and then work your way up through there. So it just, I don't know, it's kind of like one dungeon, but also kind of like two at the same time. They kind of go together.
Yeah, it really is. And earlier you see a boat, which I thought was funny, because you see a boat, the game will make you use the key item that you got from Bobby. You're like, oh, it didn't work, and then you find out and I thought, okay, that's their boat, and you find out it wasn't your boat, it was Satros and Minardi's boat, and he just figured, why not try? Because they look the same. They look alike. Yeah, and that the boat that you were trying on that was supposed to have been Bobby's, but is actually the villains. That I think was a boat from
Lemuria.
That place is Lemuria. Yes, I keep forgetting the name. That was a boat from Lemuria.
So is Bobby's boat. He mentions the reason he hires you is because it needs adepts to.
Oh, okay.
Steer it.
I thought at the end though
No,
that
'cause
they,
his
they
boat is
did
in
make
the
a
town
mention
nearby.
that the one that you found was you didn't actually find Bobby's boat. You found
Yeah, it's somebody else's.
Satyros' boat,
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's definitely
but it looks the same. I thought.
But his boat is definitely from Lemuria.
Yes.
Yeah, his boat is for sure. His boat is actually in when you beat the game after you beat the two bosses, which I actually like the final boss fight because you fight Minardi and Satros by themselves, and then after you beat them, then they combine to a giant dragon, then you fight them again. And it's a hard. It would normally be a hard boss fight. Like when I beat this game 3 years ago, it was a tough boss fight. But now with all the Jin, is not. I had no issue at all with it.
So I think the implication they're trying to kind of like read through the subtext kind of thing they're trying to give you is that Minardi and Satyros are, at least their boat is from Lemuria if they themselves are not from Lemuria. That's kind of how I came to the conclusion that that's where they were from.
Maybe we'll learn more about them in Lost Age.
Maybe.
I definitely want to play Lost Age soon, so don't worry, it's happening.
But yeah, then the game just kind of ends there. So like the effects of the first lighthouse getting lit, and spoiler alert, the second lighthouse gets lit too. You fail there as well.
I
The
think
first
we're
lighthouse.
spoiler alerts.
Yeah, I'm not worried with when games are like 20 years old. I just don't even really say a whole lot. This game isn't 20, but it's wait, no, this
Pretty
game
close.
is 20. Yeah, it's 20
20
years old. Like I don't
Okay.
care.
Can drink next year.
At that point, I'm just kind of like, if you haven't, it's fine.
Well, I mean,
So,
if
like,
you haven't,
the first lighthouse
listen to
gives
the
you
show.
the water of life or whatever that cures people. The second lighthouse, when it gets lit, it splits off like a third of the continent and just falls away.
Okay, that's kind of fucked.
fine.
Did you guys notice that? Like, unless I misinterpreted it, like to me, what I got and like from what I read online is that like when the second lighthouse gets lit, a third of the continent is cut off and floats away. Also, sorry, this just reminded me. Did you guys read up about the world? Because the world is flat with never-ending oceans that just fall off into space. If you read up about the actual planet, it's not a globe. It is a flat planet.
Oh.
It's just completely flat, and the edges of the world are the edges of the world, and the ocean is just infinite water that forever is this nonstop, never-ending waterfall into nothingness. And so that's kind of why when the second lighthouse gets lit, the continent breaks off and it flows off into like its own island, basically becoming Australia. That's why that happens, is because the world doesn't have like a crust and anything to hold it together. The land masses are just that, land masses. So when the fissure happens and this part of the land breaks off, it just flows away because there's nothing holding it in place anymore. It just floats away. It doesn't have like tectonic plates or anything like that.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I guess I didn't pay that much attention. But that's cool.
That
Where'd
stuff
you
I
find
got
that info?
from looking up like online stuff about the world. I actually looked up like that I got from the wiki. From the wiki, is that the planet is like that. It's flat, and that's why a third of the land just flows away, is because of the design of the world.
And this game has a weird ending too, because then when that happens, then you wake up and it's not. So Isaac and them you have to go. So you beat this final boss. You have to then go back to this town nearby, and you board the Bobby's ship, which is hidden in the port under this desert town somehow, or a little town. I mean, it's you get into the ship. Then the game jumps to essentially what I assume is going to be Lost Stage, where you wake up on an island as Jenna, and it's Jenna, Felix, and Creighton, and they're alone on a little island because what you did with the second lighthouse, or what they did.
Yeah, and I think they're floating away on the chunk of land, like the third of the continent that broke off, and is floating away. They're stuck on that part of it. Is I think what the implication is.
You're on different continents.
Yeah. Well, like essentially, like when the second
Sheba's
lighthouse
there
gets made, it creates an entirely new continent by like breaking one of them in half.
Yeah, and Felix jumps off the lighthouse to save Sheba.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I forgot about that.
Is why he's kind of not there to be killed in the final battle and survives to be the main character in the next game.
I look forward to seeing the rest of the story and seeing where it goes finally.
Yeah, it's really cool that they had this huge scale 50-hour 2-volume RPG on a Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, I mean, Lost Age only came out a year after the first one, so that's not too bad.
Yeah.
It definitely did. I remember the first time I played through. This time I knew it going in. The first time I played through it, I didn't know that Lost Age was like a direct sequel, like it is, like, you know, it immediately picks up and it's kind of like the second half of the story. I thought it was more like a Final Fantasy sequel kind of thing, or like, you know, none of the Final Fantasies are really connected. I thought it would be something more like that. So when I went into playing Golden Sun the first time, and then that's where the game stopped, for me, it was a bit jarring, just simply because I wasn't expecting that. I was like, where's the rest of the game? I want game number 2. And then I realized that there was, you know...
It's coming out next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I realized that there was going to be, you know, Lost Age, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But I've never played it, and I honestly know... The only thing I know about it is who you play as the main characters, and then I know kind of like a little bit about the ending of kind of how it overall ends up.
I had Lost Age as a kid and played maybe half of it. I don't remember a ton.
I own both, but I beat this game and then I never went on to Lost Age for some reason. I don't know why, looking back. But yeah, because I actually beat this game on my DS at the time. So
I didn't finish many RPGs as a kid, and I was engaged enough to finish this one.
When I was a kid, me and my friend had a list, and we were trying to see who could be the first person to beat 50 RPGs, so I could play any RPG I got my hands on.
Of course you did. Of course you were trying to finish as many games as possible.
And this is back in high school, and I still was trying, like, this. Yeah, it's been a thing for a long time. That's why the show exists, because I'm like, you know what, I need to actually do this finally. Yeah, I was always trying to beat as many games as I could. I mean, hell, even years before the show had started, I keep track, from 2016 on, I keep track of every game I beat every year, and if I use save states or not, what system I beat it on, and what date I beat it on.
I wish I had a list like that. That's cool info to have. You care about video games.
I think 2016 might not be as accurate, but like from then on, 2017 and I keep better track of things now.
That's really cool to have.
It's fun at the end of the year when you look back at everything you did.
Can I talk about another stealth sequel to this game?
Sure.
So Camelot also made they make the Mario sports games. They have since the Nintendo 64, and there are 2 Mario sports JRPGs that use the exact same engine as Golden Sun. It has the same look, has the same 3D style, and there is Mario Golf Advanced Tour and Mario Tennis Power Tour. And they're awesome. They're like these full sports JRPGs, and they feel like Golden Sun with the weird wiggly character models and faux 3D stuff going on. And they're some of the best games on the system, especially the golf one. I
really want to play those someday. They've been on my list for years since I found out they existed, but I've never got around to them yet.
Well, if you want the full Golden Sun story after Lost Age, guess you got to play Advanced Tour.
Well, I want to anyway, so it's going to happen, and it's just a matter of time.
And they're weird too. Like Mario is a god of golf on Olympus.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really weird game. It's great.
Man, how does a company go from making something like Golden Sun to Mario Golf?
Well, they
money.
They made Hot Shots Golf for Sony. They worked with Sega for years, and I think them killing the Saturn when they were in the middle of their 3-part epic fantasy RPG kind of rubbed them the wrong way. So they signed an exclusivity deal with Nintendo. But in that year between, they made Hot Shots Golf for Everybody's Golf, which is still going. It's one of the best golf series out there. But they sort of took those systems to Mario. By the time Golden Sun came out, I think they'd already made the N64 Mario sports games. They had brought Waluigi into this universe.
Someday I got to play those. They've been on my list for a long time. I definitely want to. So that might happen on the show, especially now that I know people who, at least someone that wants to play them. So that helps. It always helps when I know someone's like, hey, I'll play this with you. Okay. And I have at least a guest to line up.
They also made the Game Boy Color ones, which are also RPGs and also awesome.
Yeah, I want to play those too.
Definitely played more as a kid.
All right. Any last things that you guys want to say before, and then we can go on to Shelf Stacker Box?
We covered a lot.
Yeah, I think we covered
quite a lot. I think that's about it. I think the only thing that we really didn't cover is that the name for magic in the world is not necessarily Psynergy, it's alchemy. And like Psynergy is like a type of alchemy or something like that.
Or it's what they call it in Vault.
Okay. So just the one town calls it alchemy.
Calls it Synergy.
Okay. And then
which
everyone
makes sense that different towns would have different words for magic. That does make complete sense.
Like in the more Chinese area, they call it Qi.
Yeah.
And I think they are different schools of harnessing this power, but referring to the same power.
Okay. All right. I think, and then we should go to shelf stacker box, and I'll go first. This game is going to go on the shelf. I had a great time playing it, a lot better than I was expecting, because I wasn't sure kind of how I would feel going back to this game, because it's been a while since I played it. And I had a blast. Like it's a good game still. It's a good RPG. I mean, there were a couple things I didn't like, mainly just the fact that, if you target an enemy and then they don't attack, they die, they don't attack. I mean, that bugged me, but the game, I got used to it and I worked with it and I made it work in my favor and understood the, concept and the mechanics of the game. And yeah, it really holds up even for a 2001 game. It's 20 years later, still holds up really good and is 100% worth playing still today. I mean, it's not super accessible, but
It is
there's
not.
ways. It's only it's on Game Boy Advance and it's on the Wii U.
Yeah, so if you have your Wii U hooked up, keep fighting the good fight, but probably easier ways to play this.
Yes, and that's it. And so yeah, going on the shelf. What about you, Dan?
I think I'll put this on the shelf. I was thinking about this question while I was playing it, because there were a lot of times where it was like, oh, this part's a little too wordy, or I'm not really into this right now. But that whole last third of the game, I really enjoyed, and I'm really invested in the world, and can't wait to see what happens next. So it's going on the shelf for now. Ask me again in 2 years.
I gotta agree with you guys. It's a fantastic game. It's 100% worth playing. If you haven't played it, I don't want to necessarily say it's a must play for sure. But if you like RPGs, it is well worth your time. And I doubt that most people would consider it a waste of time to play. And I'm well invested into the world. I'm looking forward to playing Lost Ages, because I want to know how this ends. Well, I mean, as best as I can, since it technically never really gets a true ending.
Well, I mean, Lost Age ends. It isn't until Dark Age where we don't get anything else, right?
Yeah, I think Dark Dawn's more of a sequel story to that original thing. Like, okay. I think it's more or less concluded.
So at least this quest line should get an ending in Lost Age.
Yeah, and Dark Dawn's like the world 10 years later.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Only 10 years?
I think so. Could be wrong.
Man.
I could be wrong, because I know you're like the children of the original cast.
Okay. Someday it's going to be on the show. Well,
Isaac
Lost Age will be on the show next season.
Isaac totally has a beard. He totally.
Oh, that's Isaac in the same game?
Yeah, he has a beard. A leather jacket. This is actually a really cool design. I'm gonna post.
Okay, I didn't know that. All right.
The cover, I didn't realize that's Isaac.
No, that's not him on the cover.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't realize he was in the game though. I thought it was that many years later that he was gone by that point or something. Yeah, it's too bad we never got we aren't getting another
he's got
one.
A beard. He's all grown up.
Oh, that is cool. He just posted images in the chat of what he looks like.
He has a leather jacket, boots.
Okay, you have my attention. We'll be doing this one at some point. Damn it. All right, and that concludes that. So we should go to plugs Dan, where can people find you at?
Again, I do bi-monthly video game writing on my blog, Ludo Narrative Discotheque. I have not yet figured out how to get a nice sounding URL for it, so you can find that in the show notes.
All right. And thank you for listening. And if you want to hear more Golden Sun, you can hear the original Taking Golden Sun, episode 4, like 3 years ago. I don't remember what the hell I said. And none of these people were on that one. So go check that out for a completely different opinion on that game. Because I have no idea what I said 3 years ago. Any of us said 3 years ago. I know there's a lot of Kraden bitching, though. We complained a lot about Kraden.
About Kraden?
Yeah, Stu, one of my early co-hosts, he hated Kraden for some reason when we covered this game.
He's not why. I mean, he's not someone I would want my children hanging around. He's not responsible with the children around.
But I remember he hated him in that first episode. So definitely go check that out if you want to hear that. If you never listened to it and you listen to this and you enjoyed this and you want more Golden Sun, go listen to that because Lost Age is not out yet. And if you enjoyed this episode, we have lots of other episodes. We do games, comics, movies, TV pilots sometimes. So definitely go check out our giant catalog of episodes that we have that come out all the time because there's 2 a week. So definitely go, or 3 sometimes. So definitely go dive through all that. If you can't, we're on most podcatchers or somewhere you'll find us. If you can't find episodes, go back on Podbean that has everything. We are also on. You can also find us. Please look us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube, where I'm constantly posting new things about the show. And on YouTube, we have the show just audio only. So if you rather listen to it in a web browser, you can. It's there for you.
So convenient.
Try. Not many people listen on YouTube. There's like once in a while we get a few views, but I'm pretty sure nobody's actually sitting there really listening to it on YouTube. But someone does. People have commented and said, "Oh," I'm like, okay. So for those 1 or 2 people out there, you're welcome. And I want to give a shout out to our awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Helena at Hell Has Fury. You will see a link in the show notes to her TikTok. Definitely go check her out. And that's everything I need to say. So we will see you guys all. Actually, one last thing to say. We have a Patreon. It's a little dollar. You can support us on the Patreon. Go throw us a dollar. You get to vote in monthly polls. I almost forgot that because I just did. All right, now I'm done. We will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.